Right, so good evening, everyone, or happy time zone, everyone. I'm saying happy time zone this evening because, well, we're joined by somebody who is in the future. He he's just got out of bed in that future of his, and he's come to join us and say hi. And I'm gonna grill him for answers, or as many answers as possible over the next hour, and see how that works out. Sorry, I'm just moving a couple of things into different directions because too many monitors. I need to get rid of a few. Or, well, get rid of a few. No, just move them around a little bit. So, today we are joined by David Wengier, and I believe that's how you pronounce it. He can actually berate me later on if it isn't. And I'm scared now. You know what Aussies are like. Sorry. Anyway, should we introduce our guest and say hi? So, David, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you. That pronunciation was about spot on.
And I
Well
can't hear
done.
you. Sorry, I just couldn't hear you. Then I was like, I've muted him myself. Damn it. So say that again. What was that?
I was saying I'm very well, but your pronunciation was spot on.
Excellent. Thank you
So
very
well
much.
done.
You are in Melbourne, I believe.
I am in Australia. It's 6:06 a.m. So nice and early, but it's all right. I'm used to being up.
Cocho, welcome. Yeah, so firstly, I'm going to hold off on this one. Cocho, welcome and congratulations on getting Twitch partnership. That is amazing, buddy. I just nothing else apart from congratulations. Well done. So back to David because he's the important one today, and it's all about him.
Yay.
Should have had Cocho on, shouldn't I? Damn it! Mistakes were made. Mistakes were
Next
made.
time.
Next time. Not next week because we've got another Aussie next week. We've got Mish Manners coming to see us,
Awesome.
um, which should be good. So you're a developer.
I am.
You live stream on Twitch.
I do. Guilty.
Guilty. Firstly, how did you get started in development, and where are you with that now? What do you do?
How did I get started in development? Well, the simple answer, I guess, is my dad was a programmer, and my uncle was a programmer, and my other uncle was a programmer, and I think I just kind of fell into it. I have vague memories of the I won't say classic story, but it's a pretty common story of writing basic games at the age of 12 or something because dad always had a computer around. So yeah, I just kind of did. is my terrible answer to how I became a programmer. It's just the thing that I did. I don't ever remember making a conscious decision. Like deciding university courses was not really between different. It was like different computer courses, not different careers. So it just sort of happened to me.
So
But
you're in very basic terms, you're a generational coder. You're a second gen coder.
something like that, yeah.
That
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
I suppose with your was it dad, uncle, and other uncle?
It was, and from one uncle from my dad's side and one from my mum's, so it was sort of a little bit more organic than. It's not like it ran in his family necessarily. It's,
Genetic
yeah,
coder.
yeah, something like that. I think I got it from both sides.
So
And in fact, my uncle is still. I should say, my mum's brother is still coding and has software that he's still selling. He's an independent developer and still does it every day. So
that's amazing
yeah.
because when I do not know how old you are, but seeing as though you said building basic, doing basic when you were 12, it sort of puts you in the region of um, mid to late 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not when not birth, but when you were doing
Yes.
this. Um,
Yes, that makes sense.
so you're having a family that are coders. They were doing something completely different and something that isn't where it's at today. What was that like growing up with?
Um, yeah, that's you're spot on. So one one of my very distant memories, the first computer that I remember having, I have sort of memories of two computers from my childhood, and one of them that was a desktop PC in the dining room that my dad had brought home from somewhere was running. It was running Xenix, which was a Unix, a form of Unix or something. Um, this was a long time ago, and I remember playing with it was a Star Trek trivia game. I think is the only thing I can remember on that. But yeah, so my dad is pretty much his whole career, I think, a COBOL programmer, and he it was an interesting sort of transitional period at the end of his career, just before he retired. He got a job maintaining some COBOL software while the company was rewriting it completely. I think they were writing it in C++ or rewriting it, and of course that project took many years longer than they expected it to take. So my dad and this one other guy were the COBOL programmers who maintained the active system while everybody else worked on the new stuff. And it was interesting because at about that time, or no, probably a couple of years before that, actually, um, I was doing some VB6 programming, just sort of like while I was at university. I was working on a thing for someone as a way to make some money, and I was sort of starting to try to I won't say teach my dad, but at least show him a little bit of what is object oriented programming and some of the more modern concepts. And I remember looking with him, I was trying to teach him a bit of VB6 and how that worked. But then at the same time, I was looking at COBOL. Fujitsu have a COBOL.net, and I was trying to sort of show him that and say how, well, maybe if you kept doing COBOL, but you could still bring it into a bit more modern world. And yeah, that didn't go anywhere. The company he was working for decided not to go ahead with it. So he did this job being a maintenance programmer, essentially, which, I mean, it worked great for him timing wise. But it was really interesting so I remember when I was writing a basic program and dad standing over my shoulder teaching me. And then I also remember many years later writing or my dad trying to write VB6 and me standing over his shoulder. Yes, it's kind of funny, but yeah, I mean, he wasn't a programmer by like he has a degree in commerce. He sort of fell into it. He was working for the electrical company here in Victoria, so it was a public service government job, and he just, I don't know, went and did a 6 month secondment in the programming department and enjoyed it, so he kept going. So it's kind of funny that it's sort of random chance, really, that I'm here still going.
So that was a one hell of a backstory and sort of really interesting as well. So what do you do now? And if you don't mind telling us.
So I don't. It's a funny question. Well, so I work for Microsoft, and I work on under .NET in the area where sort of .NET and Visual Studio meet. And so for the last almost 2 years, I've been working on the .NET project system team, which is the project system is the thing that runs, well, tells Visual Studio what to do when you open a .NET project. So a CS proj file. And particular, most of my work is on the newer CS proj files, the small ones with not much in them. And then as it turns out, so on the 1st of July, I am moving to the IDE, the C# IDE team. But it's the 1st of July for me now, and I don't actually know if I'm starting today or tomorrow when it's the 1st of July in the US. But we won't let that detail worry anyone.
We'll go with next week, Monday,
Just to be sure.
after the 4th of July weekend.
Yes.
Which I believe is what, Sunday?
For me, Monday?
Saturday.
Yes,
No,
that makes sense.
Saturday. Yeah. A Sunday for you, Saturday for us, or half of Saturday for me.
Yeah.
So excellent. So that wow, So you are basically working on something that I'm working with every single day and have been for
Yes.
the past 16 years. Um,
Well,
but no,
yeah.
not you've been working on it for 16
Oh yes,
years.
yes,
I've been working with .NET and Visual Studio for 16 years. Um,
yes. And
uh,
I mean, I have too, and that's actually one of the things I really love about it is that I get to, like, I'm still using Visual Studio, which I've used, as you say, for the last 16 years, and I still get to use it. It's just now that when I run across a bug, I maybe have to fix it and feel bad about it.
oh, I know who I can go to now. Excellent.
Yep.
Do you get those? Do you get the tweets that say, "What have you broken now, David?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's actually one of the great things. So because we're in the .NET organization, everything we do is open source, or at least a large part of it is open source. Visual Studio itself isn't, but our little bits that sit on the side are open source. And so that involvement in the community on GitHub or on Twitter, or even I'm in a few Slack groups or Discord groups, and the ability to actually have, like, the ability to say, oh yeah, I know what that is. That's exactly this, because I've seen the bug before, or the internal report has come in, or whatever. It's actually really enjoyable to be able to, when you can, either solve that thing quickly or go, oh, I know what that is. That's awesome. I would have never found that, and then go and fix it.
Excellent. So, give me a second. I'm just trying to bump your volume a bit on my side. It's not your fault. It's me, not you. Um, so, with with thanks Siddiqui, by the way. So um with those things that you sort of sorry, I've lost my train of thought now.
It's okay.
um, no, it's gone. It's gone. I think I'm going to move on to the next thing.
It can come back.
And I'll come back to that one. So live coding.
Yes. Oh yeah, I
Oh,
think you
hang
asked
on,
me about
that's the
that.
one. Yeah, as soon as I said live coding, developer relations. So is it more? So you're working on these systems. You are a developer. Does
Yes.
some of your job have a developer relations side, or is that just accidental?
Yeah. So no, not. I'm not in the developer relations side of things. I'm not a developer advocate or anything like that. Which is, I think it's actually part of why I do the live coding. Um, so I am just a developer. If I, was never in public anywhere except, well, I guess opening pull requests on GitHub as necessary. If I was never had a public voice, that's totally fine. It's not part of my job at all. It's just something I enjoy. So I have spoken at a few conferences and things, around the place. And the thing that I always enjoyed was the conversations after the talk, because people would come up to you and have a chat that were either too shy to put their hand up in a room full of people, which is fair, or just didn't have a very directed, pointed question, but just wanted to chat. Um, I really love that sort of thing. But the travel side of going speaking conferences, particularly when you're in Australia, where there's a few local, but to get anywhere else is a very long way. The travel side is not what I mean, I enjoy it, but it's hard, and I have kids and a family, and it's not how, what I wanted to be doing for my life. So I decided in 2020 I was going to stop speaking at conferences, after I was in London for one in January, and then I thought, that's it. And then, of course, that decision was taken away from me anyway, so that was convenient.
Didn't have
But
to actually didn't have to tell anyone you weren't going to speak at
well, that's
conferences.
right.
They just
I,
ended.
I didn't have to get rejected from any conferences because I didn't bother to ask. Which actually then it actually turned out to be funny, because then, of course, well, all the conferences went online, and I totally could have spoken at them without traveling. I was like, oh wait, can I put my submission back in again? um, but I thought there was a part of it that I wanted to do without the travel, and without the conference selection committees, because what interests me is not necessarily what interests conference goers, and that's totally fine. But I like speaking at conferences for things that I like speaking about. I'm not, because I'm not doing it for my job, I'm not doing it to promote myself, or I haven't written a book or anything like that. I get to do it on my own terms, which is good, but where those terms don't match up with reality, then nothing happens. So with live coding, it's like, well, I'm going to stream on Twitch and I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Don't watch.
No,
But then you get that chat and you get the interactiveness, and it's a bit more, well, it's a lot more casual, which is also, great. Like I can go and so I'll be streaming later tonight and I don't really know what I'll be doing, but I'll work it out, rather than the hours of work preparing a conference talk and making sure it fits in the time frame and covers what you need to cover, etc. So I'm lazy. It's easier.
Yeah, I completely get that, and I was the same. So at the time I started streaming again, I had a 2-year-old and the 3-year-old had just the 2-year-old and the newborn had just arrived, and it was a case of my career was progressing, and it was one of those things where it was progressing into maybe doing talks locally and maybe going to meetups a bit more. But then meetups for me is a 2-hour round trip, and then you didn't really want to do that. And then if you wanted to do conferences, it was a flight over to the US or London, and London's a 4-hour round trip at least. And like you're just like, I'd rather spend time with family, actually. Sorry, no offense, but jog on. And then you get into coding and you get into live coding, and I was just doing it for me. I mean, Suzuna in chat can attest for that. It was a case of I was building a bot because I wanted to build it, and then it quickly moved on to extensions. They're fun. And I did that, and then it moved on and on and on. And every single thing I've been doing over the past sort of 3 years is for me, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
So apart from like more recently, especially part of the live coders, it's been like building the conference software and doing little things like that. So on that note, the live coders, you join the team. Are you having fun?
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely. I mean, I'm enjoying live coding, and the live. So I was in a couple of Discord groups before, but the live coders Discord group was the first one that I actually sort of engaged in, because all the other ones there was something about them, couldn't get into them. They were too busy or too big in some cases. But no, I mean, definitely the community within the live coders is awesome. It's definitely a plus. Unfortunately, the conferences tend to run, well, they start at 11, I think, my time, and end at about 7. So yet to be involved in them.
We won't mention that one. I think the first one was the one that ran for the longest, and it did run into your early morning ish time.
Yep.
So I remember I was there for all the way through from lunchtime, and it was 17 hours. So we at least got a bit of your day. And we had Moody in New Zealand speaking, of course, but that was a lot of fun. So yeah, it's crazy how that group has grown, and I think
it's interesting how with live streaming. So when I think about live streaming as replacing, all of the travel to conferences and things, there's jet lag obviously associated with that travel, and with live streaming, the tyranny of time zones is still there, because so I stream at 8:30 at night my time, because the kids are in bed and I know I won't be interrupted. And of course, that's no one in America is awake. UK, maybe they're waking up a bit early, but it's funny how that's still a factor. One of the things that I'm thinking of doing, and obviously starting a new team today/tomorrow, not sure yet, but given that what I work on is all open source, I think it would be interesting to do some more, basically stream my work, since it's all out in public anyway. and then that way I can do it, during the workday, which is a more sensible time for people. And I think certainly will be helpful to some people, presumably only the ones who want to actually contribute to those repositories, but that's a reasonable amount of people. But maybe a different audience and it would certainly be a different type of stream, I think, than what I do on Wednesday nights, where I'm working on my own little personal project. And
I think that's an interesting thing as well, because a lot of people still don't know what Twitch is. And I think Microsoft is starting to learn a lot more about what it is, especially some of the other departments, especially with like Fritz being involved, Ryan Clark, yourself, the whole GitHub crew are starting to sort of get involved in that as well. And I think it's interesting how we're sort of moving forward and actually being able to do that as part of your day job and going, okay, this is the code I'm writing. What? But I think we've still got to bring a lot of those people in from the outside. So, for example, the .NET library, the libraries you're working on, may not have that many contributors, or compared to other parts of other libraries, but you've got to think about how to bring those people in to watching you.
Yes.
And how that works, and the interactivity, and bring them across from not knowing what Twitch is to actually, oh, thanks to Zoom, I'm just going to put it there. I don't know what it is. I've had so many issues with audio on this machine since I rebuilt it. Is it back? Is it Suzuna?
I can hear.
Give me a second.
Okay.
This might hurt.
No electrical shocks received here. But I think you're muted.
There we go. We should be back now. Can you hear me, David?
Well, Andy's muted. I'll let me see. What can I sell you? Do you like Lego? Yeah, I got to turn that way. None of it's for sale, so I don't know why I mentioned that.
Hello, David. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Oh, hello. I can hear you again.
Oh, I've got double audio. There we go. Hello?
Hello. Hello?
Yes, that's it. Right, okay. Right, we're good.
We've done it.
We've done it. Yeah, as I was saying, I rebuilt my machine last year, and so far...
You can't tell.
Yeah. I had quite a few issues with the Windows 10 driver of my Yamaha mixer. And I haven't done a complete system reinstall since uninstalling everything with that. And I still think I need to do it. But it's when you're using every single USB port on a brand new motherboard.
Yeah.
So Lego, you were saying. So we've gone through the coding, we've gone through the live coding and why you do it.
Yeah, that's all boring.
You've got kids. That's the boring stuff out of the way.
Yep.
Including the kids. So sometimes they are. It's like, really, you want to watch Frozen for the 37th time?
Actually, I think that's one thing. I think my kids might be broken. I don't think they've ever watched a movie twice. They're very strange kids. It's really weird.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that note, you have hobbies, or do you have any? And what could they be?
I don't know whether I'd use the plural, but hobbies is a funny funny thing. I don't know whether I have a hobby, but I certainly have. Well, as you can see behind me, I enjoy Lego. I enjoy Lego cars specifically. So I am currently building one. It's over there. Well, there's not much of it yet. But yeah, I don't know whether to call that a hobby because I essentially wait for Lego to produce something and then sometimes I buy it and then I follow the instructions. But I enjoy it. Um,
I think
I
yeah, that's a hobby. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it is.
Lego is definitely a hobby.
The
Um,
I enjoy. I mean, I think it's related to programming, but the act of making things. I'm not I'm not a creative Lego builder like some people are, where I do that more uh, in the garage with making stuff with wood. Although not often and not for about 6 months because we are actually in a rental and we moved out of our house in order to do some major renovations and looking forward to moving back and having some more space to maybe do some more of that sort of thing. Um,
so
but yeah, it's
you moved out of your house to have it completely renovated, and you're in a rental. How long is how
yes.
long? Okay, so you set up your office with all the all the stuff on the nutter shelves nicely lined up. Um,
This is actually the first time I've had them nicely set up. In where I was in the previous, well, in the old house, which is still my house, but I don't quite know how to describe it. I did not have this set up behind me, but now it will be out for about a year. But I do work from home and did before the pandemic as well, and have for a couple of years. So most of the rest of my teams are in Redmond at Microsoft headquarters. So
yeah,
I've been working from home for a few years. So having a space is important for that. So, when I say we're in a rental, it's not a small, tiny little apartment. It's big enough and it has everything we need it to have because we have to get on with our lives. And boy, am I glad we decided to spend a little bit more and get one that had enough space because then, of course, 2 months after we moved in, we shut the door and didn't leave it again.
it's like yeah,
it,
wow.
it,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
I we had the talk about, well, we could survive in a 2 bedroom for a while. It's only a year, and fortunately my wife was having none of it. And boy, she she definitely saved us there.
I was going to say, does she mention it at every opportunity? She
No,
goes,
no.
if we hadn't have got this place, you wouldn't have had that nice office, and you wouldn't.
She doesn't. She's lovely, but I do occasionally.
ah, you go, I love you because you got us this place.
Exactly. Like, oh god, how
Good, good.
terrible would this have been?
Yeah, I'm currently looking to purchase soon. Um, was a house owner previously, not a house
Yep.
owner because of stuff. Uh, need to sort of get on that on a bandwagon ladder again.
Yeah.
But no, it's one of those things that yeah, definitely needs doing. And I'm the same as you, like a little bit of woodwork here and there. It's why
Mm,
this week I'm expecting the wood for my desk, basically.
very nice.
Which should be fun. Should be fun.
Yeah, I suspect that most of what I enjoy is just buying power tools, but occasionally I use them and pretend that that's the real reason.
it's like, I need this power tool. It does this
Mm,
sort of cut. It's like once, aha, excellent. That will go on the shelf in
yeah,
the yeah.
that's it.
Oh dear. So yeah, so hobbies down and all this sort of stuff. What do you So you get up to the building Lego. You get up to power tools every now and again,
Mhm.
and cutting a few shelves here and there, or building maybe a
Yeah,
table.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think the best thing I ever did was a outdoor picnic table for the kids when they were smaller. So it was 1/3 scale sort of picnic table. It's cute.
one third scale picnic table. Nice. I need to sort of do that. Maybe I've got enough wood left from my desk, but we'll have to see on that one.
Hmm.
So I was going to ask, um, your obviously going to be sticking around for a while with the live coders. Where do you see us, as in remote developers?
Mm.
Okay, I'll take this into sort of two parts. One, I'm going to say, where do you see remote going in the next decade? And
Hmm.
two, where do you see live coding as a developer going in the next decade, with maybe that converging as a remote live coder?
That's an interesting question. So the remote one obviously is something I always think about because I am a remote developer. And then, for the last 3 months, so has everybody else been a remote developer. And there's definitely been some super positive things that have come out of that, just even with my interaction with my team, where let's assume that the world goes back to normal, or at least can go back to normal. I think there definitely will be a better appreciation for what it's like working remotely and for some of those challenges. And so I would love to see that changes how the future world works, in that remote development is either allowed or embraced more, or just the attitudes to, or not even attitudes, but the actions towards it change. And so there's little things like, in my team's Microsoft Teams channel, my Teams team, every morning someone will say good morning, and everyone replies and says good morning. And it's a little small tiny thing, but it didn't start until everybody was remote. And so there's little things like that I think it would be awesome to sort of keep going in a new, more remote friendly world. I know people who are working remotely now who never would have been allowed to. Bro, needs change. I'm back. As far as live coding goes, that's an interesting one, and it's something I've been thinking about. So, as I say, I started live coding because I wanted to talk about the things that I wanted to talk about at a conference without having to worry about going to the conference or getting selected for a conference or preparing for a conference talk. And the first 2 streams I did was basically getting out of my system everything I'd learned about MS Build and project files and everything in working on this team. And I just got it all out of my system. I said everything, and it was really good. And a lot of people have said positive comments about how, like, learning things from those streams. And that's really good to know and to hear. Now, doing it once a week for, I think I've been going for about 40 weeks now, getting that there's 2 parts to it, right? There's entertainment, right? And that is interacting with chat and forming a community and all those things. And I love all of them. But there's also still a part of it that I think is valuable, which is a little bit of education. The problem is the education is now buried in a 2-hour video that is up on YouTube that, a person who's not engaged with the project is unlikely to watch all 2 hours. But in there will be hopefully a nugget of information that they can learn from and take. So I'm trying to think about how to sort of fix that problem or do something about that. And, maybe it's more like at the moment. So I put all of my streams on YouTube, but I don't edit them at all. Maybe it's editing. Maybe it's reviewing that past stream and recording a short version of just the bits that are, interesting. I don't know. It's an interesting balance though, because you also need that sort of that pair programming type of thing you get with having chat giving you feedback to know. Well, I need it anyway to know what to talk about. So working on Visual Studio, there's lots of things that I do, and I just go click, 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 press some buttons, and away we go. And then oftentimes someone will be saying, "Hang on, what was that? What did you do there?" Right? And there's so much stuff in Visual Studio. It's not even necessarily that I'm using new stuff and it's new stuff that no one's heard of. This could be stuff. There's someone on my team who's worked at Microsoft on Visual Studio he's worked at Microsoft for about 15 years and on Visual Studio for I think the last 8. And in one of our first pair programming sessions when I first joined the team, I right-clicked and I clicked on a menu item, and he's like, wait, what does that do? It's like, there's so much stuff in there. There's always something new for people, but you don't know what you're doing that the other people don't know. So you need the interaction and you need that conversation in order to identify those things, but then, yeah, some way to surface them later. The thing with live coding in the future and remote work and everything that then I think about is there's things like, so I don't know if you've heard of Visual Studio Live Share,
Yes.
which is where it's, remote desktop, but for code, right? So without remote desktop and without, well, you can do, I think you can do audio and cameras now as well in it, but, essentially having two cursors in the file and it's collaborative editing. There's also another thing that is coming out soon called Visual Studio Code Spaces, which is where you can kind of imagine it as having a Visual Studio running in the cloud, and then you connect to it from your computer, so you don't need to have a beefy computer, but also other people can connect to it using live share, and so everybody could be all partying on the one Visual Studio instance. So you could do things, and I mean, you could use this in a live stream by literally allowing chat to join the coding session. And so,
And I've seen it.
right,
I've seen it done before on Twitch Dev. I think they did it for a couple of streams
cool.
with Matt Arbach. He sort of went, okay, let's bring a few of the chat in, and it was people that he knew, and it was a case of just clicking around and doing it. There's a couple of things that I want from live share,
Yeah.
but that is specifically from a live streaming standpoint. It's a case of how much access you give them should be a little bit more granular from my standpoint, but that's because I want people to be able to go, I want to be able to go, here's the link for the live share, go and add code. Only I can do the other special stuff that you should not be able to see.
That's good. I mean, so I haven't personally seen that. I'll have to go and see if I can find where that is and watch VOD. But I think, like, I get a lot of help. So on my streams, I'm writing a game, but it's not much of a game. But and it's trains going around a little track. But I'm not fantastic at math. In fact, I'm terrible at math, and I try to avoid it as much as possible. But there's a couple of people in my chat who are there pretty much all the time now, which is great, and they help me a lot. And there's usually, some little small snippet of math-based code that gets pasted into chat, and I copy it out of chat and I put it in the code and go, oh yeah, that worked, or it didn't work. And so opening that up to say, well, hang on, here, you type it, would be really cool. But yes, there does maybe need to be some constraints, or, you don't want, it's not a good stream if there's 10 people working in the background and no one can see them. So there's a balance there, but I think those sorts of things will be interesting. Just more, I really like the collaborative nature that live coding can bring. And so I think it was Coding Garden a few weeks ago I was watching, and he was doing some, it was some code golf, and people in chat were submitting their answers, and he had his answer, and he just talked through them all. Things like that, where chat can actually get involved and contribute as well, I think is interesting. But yeah, the tools, we just need the tools to be a little bit more, tailored, let's say.
Are you watching the Live Coders chat right now? Because if you aren't...
I'm not, because I don't trust my internet connection, but I'll
Okay, so Suzuna is one of my sort of long-term viewers, and we were doing a bit of debugging the other day, and he came up with a question. He goes, why can't we just ask them to hide it automatically? And this is when you do HTTP requests or responses, and it automatically shows up in the debugger the auth header without blurring it, and it's just like, please, that's that. I was just like, well, there we go again. I've got to refresh that one.
Yep.
And it's always one of those little things that you go, do I really want to be bothering them with that one? Because it's for live streamers. But the thing is, there are that many of us using things like Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code as well now, that maybe it's an option that we actually ask for it.
Well, I mean, I think even just, if you're screen sharing over Teams or doing an ad hoc meeting or something, you might want those things secret as well. So I have seen a Visual Studio Code extension that it detects AWS keys and Azure keys, and it blurs them out in the editor. I can't remember the name, but I can dig it up later for you. But yeah, that sort of thing. It would be one, yes, to put in, switch on a privacy mode or a something mode where those sorts of things can be blocked, or yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely, because I think it was Brian Clark or Clarkio who also wrote the Azure subscription blocker Chrome plugin, which then got blocked because he named it Azure plugin and he wasn't allowed to publish it. But that works really well for blocking like subscription keys and all that sort of stuff when you're in the Azure UI, which is fantastic. And I think that's where maybe we can sort of improve and maybe talk about that and maybe put in requests for those things. But it's a case of, I always feel like, should I not? Am I allowed to?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
can you attest to that? Are you saying we shouldn't? Maybe it's possible.
I think it's one of the things that one of the things that, so live share and code spaces, I think, are a reaction to this notion that our developer environments are often very local. I have a very beefy machine and I don't want anyone to take it away from me, but it's a shame that I need it, right? And build times can be like, I have the bits on my machine. I can do a full build of Visual Studio and it, I don't know, takes 2 or 3 hours. That's not something you want to do all the time, right? So I think there's a bunch of things that we can improve generally about allowing people to be more effective remote and having less resources, whether that's because they're working remote or because they're watching a stream where they don't have all the bits on their machine or whatever it is. I think there's lots of overlap in those scenarios, and I think there's lots of things happening now in reaction to all that, obviously brought on by COVID. But yeah, hopefully those sorts of investments maybe will continue and bear fruit, as they say.
Cool.
Because it is, touch wood, so far I haven't slipped up and leaked a credential or anything, but then I'm also not doing anything that has credentials really, so I'm kind of lucky.
It's just like at the end of each stream I'm pretty much revoke all and start again tomorrow.
Yes.
I do need a panic button somewhere that does it for me. But thank you very much for being with us.
You're welcome.
It's been really good talking to you, and I'm sort of happy that we got to talk about some of the stuff that you do, especially on the Microsoft team and sort of which team you're on. Because it's always interesting to sort of go, I work at Microsoft, and it's like, okay, but there's a lot of people that work for Microsoft.
I get DMs on Discord because I'm in there's an official Microsoft Discord, and I get DMs on Discord, and they're just usually, can you help me? My Xbox key doesn't work. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, but there's 150,000 employees of this company. I have no idea what you're talking about.
What's
it
an
happens.
Xbox? But thank you very much. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Would you come back again? And
absolutely.
In 165 episodes time, depending on how many team members.
Once we got through everybody, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much, and anyone who's out there, thank you for being here. You've been amazing. I've been Lucky Number 7, and that has been David Wengier. There you go.
Very good.
And bye for now, everyone. We're going to go and raid somebody, so stick around. We are now on the whole screen. But yeah, let's see who is live. And if you've got any options, David, just give me a shout. Always a tough choice, definitely. Ooh, Manning are doing a thing, aren't they? Let's go and see Manning Publications. Whoa, hang on. We will. Manning Publications are doing. They haven't changed their stream title. They're doing a Kubernetes conference. So that's we got to tell them off for not changing their stream title. Right. So let's go and raid them and say hello. And no, I don't. There we go. So thank you very much for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week with Mish Manners and another Australian. So she'll be up bright and early for that one. So bye for now, everyone.